Shin Kamen, a film made to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the long-running franchise, finally sees the light of day. Having earlier released in Japan, the film surprisingly saw its US debut for originally one night only, but due to early seat reservations, opened up for a second showing. And although the closest theater to me was more than an hour and a half away, I went to see it twice. Now, if you're looking for spoiler-free thoughts, I made a video about that last week, and I decided to give the film a second viewing to see if I caught anything that I might have missed the first time. If my thoughts after the initial viewing were changed or even warranted, as well as seeing if my first viewing's rating would remain the same or be altered. Now, before going into some of the more visually appealing parts of the film, I gotta start things off that the lore from this film actually runs pretty deep, and in itself pays great homage to Ishinomori's other tokusatsu works, with this film's version of Shocker having its root tied to something people in the past might have considered science fiction, but today feels like a likely possibility. Shocker in itself was a major part of the continual conflict in Kamen Rider. This version's form of Shocker is one based on the idealism of human society being happy. Being founded by a billionaire, he creates an artificial intelligence known as I, like the letter to analyze human thought in order to create an idealized society. We barely see much of I in the film, but I like how it can be skewed into the word I, as the great leader of Shocker, as well as various successor groups, would take on a form similar to the all-seeing eye. The second creation was J, a robot with the observational task of watching how humans interact. However, after a while, J was succeeded by K, with his robot body left somewhere in storage. J is an interesting one because half of his body is constructed, but the other half looks to be a work in progress, given a slight appearance to Kikaider's robot side, while his successor resembles robot KGK. Nice to know that Shinken Red can also still be getting work in Toku, after Gatchaman was so awful. The billionaire who creates Shocker, well after leaving things in the hands of his creations, he decides to exit. YouTube don't like certain words, y'all. Sadly, this is the most we get of the founding of Shocker, as a lot of the characters get more fleshing out and proper origins in the prequel manga to the film, which I have not read. So I'm purely judging this film on the merits of the film alone and my knowledge of the franchise. That's it for all the cool backlog stuff, Deuteroni. Not Oh god. See, I knew rating a theatrical release wouldn't even do this.
That's right, Brosev. It's your Flyboy the movie, Shin Zet Doge. Wedged right in between Thunder RX and Alien Kuga, there's this little phase in which all these franchises had films. And that's me! Now, let me give y'all the 411 on all the fly-ass moments of this film.
In a world in which theatrical Kamen Rider films feel like glorified commercials and nostalgia trips, comes a film that dares to defy that logic by hitting you with nostalgia and glorified toy commercials, except this time, there's blood. Hongo Takashi was just your typical college student when daddy issues due to negotiation tactics goes wrong. He aims to prove daddy wrong, becoming an augmented human at the hands of Dr. Midorikawa. When the brainwashing stops halfway. Saved by the doctor's daughter Ruriko, this girl boss is prepped for every scenario. Did I mention she was a test tube baby? The daddy issues continue as donor daddy gets done in by Kuma Og. But Ryu sets 50 years into waiting and gravity kicks later, and that spider got the big boot. Join Hongo, scarf-handing Ruriko, and their pet bike Cyclone as they are acquainted by the government to take on various Shocker augments, working their way to her brother Ichiro, who has mommy issues. A Kill Bill array of enemies, such as the redonkulous CG hypnotizing and disease-ridden Batman. Kinda a bit too soon on that one, don't you think, Ano? ASMR Ecstasy, who gets done in by national security, Sasori Org. Ruriko's somewhat friend, second thirst trap, and overall best fight of the film, Hachi Org. Oh, but Hongo doesn't beat her. So, we're fine for another nope, the government hits her with that thirst trap venom. Ecstasy. In case the first wave of nostalgia wasn't enough, how about real-life circumstances and references? Introducing The Replacement. Taking on Hongo with somewhat of a will of his own, this man knocks Hongo into early retirement with broken leg syndrome. Though, just in time for Ruriko to lay in the mind hacks and give him that cleanse. And a scarf. Seriously, where does she keep pulling these scarves from? Either way, have you heard of the 2-for-1 special? Because this film combines Kamakiri and Chameleon with a K together to give you KK Og. Just one kaijin short of being truly evil. Giving Ruriko that shank, the phone job hits suddenly enough to give Hongo that much needed character development, but not before replacement Ichimonji Hayato raises up from guest star to leading man. Did I forget to mention that there was knife fights? Because if you thought one replacement wasn't enough, how about a swarm? But this time, they've got guns. You like rider kicks? How about 3-on-1 rider kick? How about that times 2? Finally, taking the fight to the big man himself, we get Fabulous Butterfly Man with a fly-ass suit. Kamen Rider Zerogo is here with a masterful takedown up until the good guys realize they've got a plan. Do you like sudden shifts in fighting tones? Do you like OP villains getting nerfed in mere seconds? What about if we add a nice helmet split right after? How about coming to terms with the fact that he fucked up because Hongo's helmet had a message from Ruriko in it? Still not satisfied? How about they all agree that this was fucked up and Ichiro and Hongo die? Still not buying it? How about if we repaint Hongo's helmet, give it to leading man Hayato along with essentially the real Ichigo suit, and they become a double rider with Hongo's essence in that helmet? If you like exaggerated blood, if you like face peeling that makes you go, is that an Inazuman reference? And if you like quoted wiki stats from a bat who thinks they know it all just to get thrown off by the fact that a bike can jump and you can jump off said bike, then this is the film for you, Shin Kamen Rider.
Look, Bromeyer, where did you come from?
You said nostalgia? A bit too much. But what you smell like? Okay. So, yeah. The film is a great homage to the source material without completely abandoning the initial visions, but still modernizing it in a way that still makes it feel fresh. It's what I wish Black Sun would have been versus the creative liberties they took to fundamentally change the source material. Here we have reworked characters from the show and manga reworked to be a hybridization of both mediums this series took, but adding in a bit of modern flair. It's literally the best of both worlds. Where it did lose me a bit was the sudden shift in Ichiro during the final fight, as it suddenly shifted from him bodying Hongo and Hayato to getting irate and almost accommodational, as he tries to find common ground with Hongo so that he will join his cause in storing human prana or their essence away, thus it can remain in its purest form, while fundamentally admitting that he doesn't know and understand people. Add that to the sound design of the final fight where the impact of the hits are muted in favor of dialogue and grunts, and it just holds the film back from being a real masterpiece in my eyes. Hongo as a character did feel more like he was being led by Ruriko through the motions as he starts finding his groove. He has a naive nature, but trying to outdo his father in his ability to use the power that was given to him in order to save everyone and himself. But he doesn't find his purpose until Ruriko's death, that I actually didn't expect. Ruriko definitely seemed like a know-it-all in the beginning to the point that it was a detriment to her as a character, but I understand that now given that she's a computational organism. I did enjoy that the more time she spent with Hongo, the more she changed into feeling more human. She herself, being raised by the organization, never felt what it was like to be human or to even be a female at that. So, getting just a bit of it from Hongo was enough to give her purpose to keep going. Hideaki Anno, the director for this film and also the writer, does a great job in laying the foundations for what will happen early on, as nothing really is an ass-pull. Since Ruriko is a computational organism that with enough time can reverse engineer the code for anything, even making copies. And halfway through the film, we see that not only does she start uploading her will into Hongo's helmet, but she outright states that she's also storing a copy of his prana into it. So it's all laid out there. In the first viewing of the film, I was taken aback by Ruriko's death, as well as Hongo's. However, in the second viewing, I caught on to the fact that this was all planned or even alluded to early on, which is why Hongo was ready to sacrifice it all since he too knew that there was always a plan in place. Ichimonji Hayato was the runaway hit and the proper leading man once he came into the picture. I just wish that there was more of him, but of course, that's where the sequel bait comes in. There is a lot more left to this world in itself, so much so that it could lead not into Shin Go Rangers, but into the Shin Ishinomori-verse. As mentioned before, there's sprinkles of his other works in here, so much so that I feel that this is a proper homage and love letter to the man himself. The seed plants for spin-offs are all here. I was speculating after the second viewing that because Jay's body was left behind in storage as he got transferred over to K, what if they took a human component to the other half and literally made Shin Kakaider? Or if they transfer Hongo's prana into it and we get a full-on hybridization. With K literally just observing things throughout the film, he can get elevated into getting his own film. All this while I becomes the overarching villain of it all, such as the new great leader. Seriously, we need that Shin Ishinomori verse stat, and Anno is out here just laying it all out. All that aside, I love this film. I enjoyed all the musical callbacks to the original series, the set design, and like I mentioned in the spoiler-free video, the fights were absolutely a visual showpiece for me. With the Hachi Og fight being at the very top, Ichigo versus Nigo right below that, the two Riders versus the Locust Orgs below that, then Kumo Org, Kamakiri, and finally, Zero Go. Sasori does not count since she got blasted. In more ways than one. Due to all of this, my final score for this film is the Agito A! What's honestly preventing this from reaching the S rank is the fact that even though Anno does want to make a sequel in this universe, currently nothing has been greenlit. So we may go without ever getting a sequel to this film, and that leaves all these seed plants bearing no fruit. It's a tricky thing ending on a continuation note, because if the payoff isn't there, it kind of feels like a cop-out. And I get it, that the sequel can come in another form of media, but I personally prefer that it sticks to the form factor that it gets introduced in. So with all that being said, what did you think about Shin Kamen Rider, the twists, the turns, the thirst, and the sequel bait? Based off of the seed plants Anno left behind here, how do you wish for it to continue? And don't say Shin Go Ranger, because no. Real quick shout out to the 2 subscribers that I actually met at the 2 theatrical showings that I went to. Took me by surprise being recognized in public like that, but it was fun speaking with fellow nerds. Anyway, that's it from me. I will catch you all on the next one. Bye.